welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Before you is the leadership of Informal Sector Workers Association. Today we want to issue a policy statement regarding on the repressive regimes around Africa. Before we issue this policy brief, we are going to do the introductions, and later on I'll read the policy statement.
I'm Daniel from Viga County. Kwa majina naitwa George, Homa Bay County.
I'm Ben from DC County.
I'm Guti from Servant. Mayugi, Kisumu County.
Victor, Migori County.
I'm Maina from Muranga. I'm the chairman of Small Baba Association.
Okay, thank you very much for the introductions. Our policy position paper is in regards to restoring accountability in Africa. Why African Union and the United Nations must protect African citizens from repressive regimes. Okay. Across Africa, millions of citizens continue to live under repressive regimes that use intimidation, censorship, and economic exploitation to silence dissent and entrench personal rule. Yet, these very governments remain dues-paying members of the African Union and the United Nations. Their subscriptions are funded by the same citizens they oppress. This policy paper by the Informal Sector Workers Association of Kenya calls for the urgent and uncompromising accountability from the African Union and the United Nations. The dignity of African citizens cannot be negotiable. Citizens' taxes are not meant to finance oppression. They are meant to support protection, justice, and development. The African Union and the United Nations must act as clubs of governments, must act not as clubs of governments, but as guardians of people's sovereignty and humanity. Across the continent, civic spaces continue to shrink. Peaceful protests are criminalized. Journalists are jailed and opposition parties are violently suppressed. Yet, many of these governments continue to enjoy international legitimacy and protection under AU and UN membership. The taxes of ordinary workers, traders, and farmers finance governments that weaponize security forces against their own people. Membership fees paid to regional and international bodies come from same public coffers that deny citizens health care, education, and basic freedoms. This moral contradiction must end. The mandate of African Union and the United Nations. The AU Constitutive Act, Article 4H, clearly empowers intervention in member states in cases of war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. Similarly, the United Nations Charter upholds the principles of human rights, justice, and peace. These institutions, therefore, have both the legal authority and moral duty to protect citizens when governments become agents of repression. However, the African Union and the United Nations too often remain paralyzed by diplomacy. Bureaucratic caution and political alliances take precedence over human rights. The result is a growing perception that these bodies serve allies and not citizens. Mechanisms for action and reform. To restore credibility, the African Union and United Nations must transform from passive observers in active defenders of citizens. Informal Sector Workers Association proposes the following actions. 1. Enforce immediate suspension of member states that commit systematic human rights violations. Number 2. Activate African Union and United Nations human rights courts to prosecute state officials responsible for repression. Number 3. Impose targeted sanctions on individuals and not citizens who abuse power and public resources. Number 4. Establish African Union citizen monitoring mechanisms to hold governments accountable for how membership fees are used. Number 5, protect and fund civil organizations, trade unions, and independent media as partners in governance and accountability. The citizens' taxes must not fund tyranny. Every year, African citizens contribute billions in taxes, part of which finances their government's participation in AU and UN. When these governments misuse those resources to entrench dictatorship, the African Union and the United Nations become complicit by inaction. This must change. Citizens' taxes must not fund tyranny. They must finance protection, development, and justice. African citizens are the true shareholders of the African Union and the United Nations system. It is time these institutions treat them as such. In conclusion, we are calling for moral courage. The dignity of African citizens cannot be negotiable. The African Union and the United Nations must act not as clubs of governments, but as guardians of the people's sovereignty and humanity. When repression occurs, silence is complicity. Intervention is not interference, it is justice. We call upon all civic movements, human rights defenders, and workers' associations across Africa to unite in demanding accountability. Our taxes, our humanity deserve protection, not betrayal. Thank you very much.